Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, said today that if the U.S. imposes tariffs, he will respond and he will not relent until the tariffs are removed. Are we seeing the start of a trade war with Canada?
I don't think so. I think the president is going to implement those tariffs tomorrow, and he will respond to Mr. Trudeau's comments in due time, I am sure.
What type of things have to happen? What does the administration need to see in order to avoid those tariffs?
Well, the tariffs are incoming tomorrow on Canada, and the reason for that is because both Canada and Mexico have allowed an unprecedented invasion of illegal fentanyl that is killing American citizens and also illegal immigrants into our country. In fact, I have more language for you right here. Canada, Mexico, and China, which, as I mentioned, President Trump will implement a 10% tariff on China, have all enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. The amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the southern border in the last 2 years alone has the potential to kill tens of millions of Americans. And so the president is intent on doing this, and I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
If I may, one more.
Yes, Lindsay.
Can I go back to the plane crash for just 1 second?
You're interrupting your colleague, but sure.
Sorry, I thought you called on me.
I called on Lindsay.
The president this morning said the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high. I'm wondering if he's basing that on what he learned from investigators, and if you could offer a little bit more of a window into how he is keeping abreast of this investigation.
Sure.
Is the NTSB briefing him separately? Is he meeting in the Situation Room? You just sort of offer a window into that.
Yeah, the president based that statement on truth, because it is truth and it's fact, and it was relayed to him by the authorities who are overseeing the investigation into this horrific plane collision. And the president, as I said in my opening remarks, continues to be briefed on the collision by everybody across his cabinet, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Defense, the NTSB, who the commissioner there was in the Oval Office with him yesterday. Lindsay. Lindsay, go ahead. Lindsay, go ahead. Thank you.
In recent days, the CIA actually revealed that they do also believe that COVID-19 was from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. How is the president planning on responding to this additional intel from the CIA, and will it impact how he responds to them with tariffs?
Yeah, kudos to John Ratcliffe for revealing that truth and that fact to the American people. Many years too late, the Biden administration had a chance to let the American people know the truth about that, and for some reason, they chose not to. I also would just like to point out that several years ago, when I was working in this press shop and President Trump would take to this podium to brief the American people on COVID-19, he suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China. And many members in this very room mocked him for that, said he was spewing conspiracy theories. He was not. We now know that to be the confirmable truth. It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again. Sure.
Caroline, thank you. I wanted to ask about Secretary Rubio's trip to Panama first.
Sure.
What did the conversations look like with President Trump on that? The president of Panama says it is, quote, impossible to negotiate over the canal. So what are you expecting from this visit?
So I have not been present for Secretary Rubio's conversations with President Trump about the Panama Canal. I have been present for President Trump's own thoughts on the Panama Canal, and you've all seen them as well in his public statements that he has shown. He believes it's unacceptable that the canal is essentially run by the Chinese Communist Party. If you look at both ends of the canal, massive Chinese Communist Party linked companies run the canal. That's unfair to the American people, many of whom lost their lives many years ago building this canal. The American taxpayers are paying millions of dollars for the canal, and the president believes it's in our national interest as a nation for Secretary Rubio to go there and begin these discussions, and that's exactly why he's doing that. Sure.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
Is the United States in the process of pulling out of Syria militarily? Because the president wanted to do that in his first term as well, and he had a lot of pushback from the Pentagon and Congress. And based on what he said yesterday, is he considering doing that in a short time?
The president was asked and answered this question yesterday, and he, as the commander-in-chief of the United States military, reserves the right to review troop deployments overseas at any point in time.
Is that a topic right now?
Yes.
Thank you. Two questions. So we now know that the staffing was not normal at the air traffic tower, and so with the government freezing the hiring of new federal workers and offering buyouts, are you not afraid that more incidents of different kind could happen with less staffing in different agencies?
Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating DEI hiring practices at the FAA. He also, following the tragic crash, as you all know, in the Oval Office yesterday, signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the FAA to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and aviation safety standards. And I would also just say there's a cultural piece to this as well. If you are an American who has spent many years studying aviation and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description, I think that deteriorates the morale of people in this industry. And if you talk to people in this industry, they'll tell you that. In fact, many of them filed a lawsuit against the FAA a couple of years ago under Joe Biden's administration because they were denied positions because of this DEI hiring practice that was putting identity politics over merit and skills. That's unacceptable. And I think just to put a fine point on this, because this is the third or fourth question I've answered on this subject, when you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. Rob Crilly.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that last question, actually. Has there been any sort of assurance from the FAA that they will immediately improve staffing levels, given the reports of not normal staffing levels on Wednesday?
Oh, absolutely. You had Secretary Duffy here yesterday at the White House at this podium saying that he is on it, and we can all trust that he definitely will be. John Decker.
Thanks a lot, Carol. You called on me, right?
Yes, I did.
Thank you very much.
As long as your name's still John Decker.
It is, absolutely. Thank you. The president's meeting today with the founder and CEO of NVIDIA. What is that meeting concerning, and who sought that meeting?
I don't have details on this. It's a private meeting. It will take place at 2:30 p.m. I'll try to get there in time, and I can let you know after. How's that?
On Guantanamo Bay, can you give more details about setting up that detention facility at Gitmo? How will that come about? What's the timing in terms of standing it up? And of course, this has happened before during the Clinton administration.
Yeah, that's right.
Detainees of Cuban and Haitian descent were both detained at Guantanamo. Are you looking at that model in setting up this detention facility?
Secretary Hegseth, I believe, was on television this morning answering this question, and he said that the Department of Defense is already on it. He has directed his agency to ensure that Gitmo is increasing their capacity for beds, and that's exactly what President Trump's executive order did. It directed Secretary Hegseth and also Secretary Noem to expand the Migrant Operations Center at the Naval Station to provide for this extra detention space. And as Secretary Hegseth confirmed this morning, that operation is underway. Sure.
Caroline, on the tariffs, can you clarify whether those will actually be going into effect tomorrow, or whether there might be some lead time?
Yes.
And are those, they will be going into effect tomorrow?
Correct.
And are those meant to be in place long term, or is there a scenario in which Canada, Mexico, and China can offer concessions and then they would be removed?
At this point, the president has made it very clear those tariffs are going to be implemented and in effect. If the president at any time decides to roll back those tariffs, I'll leave it to him to make that decision. But starting tomorrow, those tariffs will be in place. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline.
Yes.
Can you confirm a report by our friends at the Daily Mail that the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to be visiting the White House in February? And also, if I may, do you have any more details on Netanyahu's visit here next week?
Sure. I have not seen that report about the Prime Minister. I can go check back with our friends at the National Security Council and get back to you on that. I can confirm that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be here on Tuesday, February 4th, for a working meeting and visit with the President. And I'm sure you will all be here, very excited to cover that visit. Sure. Daniel.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
Back on the Guantanamo Bay subject, specifically, obviously, why does the president feel like that's the best location or a good location to make sure that Americans are safe from violent, illegal migrant crime?
Well, it's a really good question, and the memorandum that he signed, the order that he signed, builds on his previous executive actions, obviously, to secure our southern border and deport illegal criminals from the interior of our country. We know that we have an issue with detention space here in the interior, which is a big reason why Congress needs to pass this reconciliation package as quickly as possible to ensure that DHS and ICE have the funding they need to detain these individuals that the administration is very swiftly rounding up and deporting, arresting and deporting these illegal immigrant criminals. And so the president feels it's an appropriate place. Taxpayers are already funding it. The space is there. Why not use it? And the Secretary of Defense, as I said, is working on that as we speak. Sure. Yes.
Thank you so much for having me here and answering your question. So I want to talk more about the success that ICE is having finding these violent criminal aliens, some of them being sexual predators. But my friend Ben Bergholm reports that the Chicago mayor and the Illinois governor are preventing ICE agents from going into jails and prisons to enforce detainers against illegal aliens. In Maryland, the Attorney General has also put out a memo hindering local police cooperation with ICE. Does the administration have any comment on leftist state and local officials defying ICE and Trump's deportation efforts?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that Democrat officials in these cities who have been completely overrun and overwhelmed by illegal immigrant criminals would refuse support and help to cure this problem that has especially taken over their cities. I guess they don't want to admit they've been wrong with their sanctuary city policies. I'm not sure. You'll have to ask them about their intentions, but they would be very wise to comply with this administration because this administration is hell-bent on enforcing our nation's immigration laws, and this administration will continue to arrest and detain and deport illegal migrant criminals. And what we won't do is defy our nation's immigration laws like the previous administration, who had these orders of removal on illegal immigrants across the country and were refusing to execute on them. We will continue to remove illegal criminals from our nation's interior.
Are these sanctuary city leaders, are they violating the law?
I would certainly think so. I'd have to check back on which specific law they're violating, but certainly if they're not enforcing our nation's immigration law, sounds like they are breaking the law. And I would also add that their constituents don't approve of that. You've seen residents in Chicago show up at their city council meetings infuriated with their leadership in that city because they are working very hard to provide for their families. They want public safety and law and order, and their officials have abandoned those very basic American principles in these cities. And the American people want law and order. It's, again, an overwhelmingly popular policy to deport illegal criminals from our nation's interior, and this administration will continue to affect that goal. Sure.
Sure. A question on Colombia. We just interviewed Colombian President Gustavo Petro, and he insisted that he's not going to take any Colombian deportee from the U.S. if they arrive in South America handcuffed. How this administration responds to that?
When did the Colombian president make those remarks?
Today, for an interview with us at Univision.
Well, I will share those with the President of the United States, and I will get back to you on his response.
What happens if Nicolas Maduro?
Caroline, there are more than 150,000 disabled Americans who are working today. The president talked a lot yesterday about hiring the best and the brightest to work in the federal government. Safety aside, does he believe that disabled people do have a place to work in the federal government? And does he also support the current protections for disabled people working in the private sector as well?
The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs.